So you knew this was coming. We already know that people like Roland Martin and all these guys, man, are grifters. And they're going to move to wherever the consciousness is moving to, right? Whatever's going to get them clicks, they're going to go on there, right? So now first they was talking down on FBA, talking bad about FBA. We know that he's had his feuds with Tariq Nasheed, right? And they were saying that FBA is divisive and everything. But ever since Bernice King, late Martin Luther King's daughter, spoke on that Shabuzi, when he won his Grammy, she spoke out against what he said. Now all of a sudden, all the Democratic Shills and everybody's coming out because Bernice has something to say, and she spoke the same way foundational Black Americans speak. And we was never speaking about hating any other group. It's funny how the minute we want to highlight our accomplishments, all of a sudden we being divisive. All of a sudden, well, we just want to work with you. What you mean you just want to work with me? Nobody ever said we didn't want to deal with you. We just saying we want to self-identify ourselves. But you already make us out to be the enemy because we already know why that's happening. So now you have Roland Martin and all them. They're coming out and they're using the same talking points. And they're speaking, they're saying things like this.
It is, I think, critically important that education on these matters be understood. Listen, one of the things that I've always said is that if you are an African immigrant or you are a Black immigrant coming to this country, whether it is an African country, whether it is Jamaica, the Bahamas, if it's St. Kitts, if it's Bermuda, does not matter, that you need to understand the history of people of African descent in the United States. It's no different that if I, as an African American, went to Bermuda, went to the Bahamas, went to other countries where there are Black people, then I need to have an understanding of the history of people in those countries. The reality is, and I went to the square in Jamaica where they had the huge posters, and when I was there last time, they had the history there in the airport, and I took different photos showing you the freedom fighters of Jamaica, the people who actually fought slavery in Jamaica. And so what we have to recognize is that slavery just was not fought in the United States. Haiti was a battle where they got their independence. When you talk about other slave rebellions, what took place in Haiti inspired what took place in the United States when it came to the slave rebellion. But the other thing is this here, and this is what's also, I think, important, not just for a Shabuzi, not just for Black immigrants, but also for a lot of African Americans. We also have to, and I think Bernice King did a great job with this, to get people to understand that you had nearly 250 years of chattel slavery. But then you had Reconstruction. Then you had 92 years of Jim Crow. And then you had post-Jim Crow. So what often happens is we isolate slavery as if the next 100 years didn't exist. You go from, listen, you had the 1875 Civil Rights Act that was declared unconstitutional. There was not another Civil Rights Act passed by Congress until 1957. You can't act like that didn't exist. And so I think one of the mistakes is people say, well, slavery was a long time. Okay, yeah, you're right. But there was some shit that went down after slavery that still was screwed up for Black folks. That, to me, Joe, is a mistake that is constantly made as if the 100 years after slavery ended, act like it didn't exist. Oh, it did.
So now because Bernice King spoke out, now they all act like they got something to say. Now they all act like they understand. And I guarantee you, Bernice is probably her grandchildren or her nieces and nephews. They on the FBA train. They hearing this. They probably in her ear like, listen, they're not saying that they hate immigrants, right? They're saying that we got to highlight our story. What Dr. King was doing for us here in the shores of North America. We're not disrespecting or denigrating anybody else. We already know who Harry Belafonte was. We already know who Marcus Garvey was, and Cicely Tyson, and all these people of the past. We know them. When they came over, they were riders. They came over at a different time when we were more unified together, right? But make no mistake about it. They came here and added on to a movement that was already going. When Marcus Garvey got here, you had already had a Hubert Harrison. You already had a Henry Highland Garnett, a Henry McNeil Turner, right? I can go on and on and on. You already had a Martin Delaney, people that was that was already moving the needle, right? He came here and did in America what he couldn't do in Jamaica. And even when he got kicked out and went back, he still couldn't do it. He had to go overseas, right? So, nah, man, I'm not buying that. We ain't buying that. We always had our arms open. We always had our arms open. We already set the stage and the platform for other groups to come and amalgamate themselves into us. So stop trying to say that you formed our culture. You didn't form our culture. We know Shirley Chisholm exists, but before Shirley Chisholm, it was Mary Bethune-McLeod, right? We already had those people in place. We already had, listen, we had Barbara Johns, Daisy Bates. Like, we already had the people. So, like, what are we talking about here? Like, y'all got to tell that to people that don't know their own story, right? But they wasn't finished using FBA talking points.
Mustafa, I'll start with you. What do you make of this? This is something that has happened a lot when folks say that. Black folks like, hold up, when you talk about who built this country, not forgetting what happened, 250 plus years of American shadow slavery. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I think you laid it out right there. For those of us whose roots run through this country for hundreds and hundreds of years, we understand the sacrifice that we gave, often unwillingly, to actually build this country. We understand our tears, our breath, our bones, our blood that has gone into this. So when you have folks who have recently come to the country, no one wants to take away from the contributions that immigrants have made to the country, but we've got to also talk about the foundation of the individuals who actually helped to build this country. And when you don't do that, there is a disrespect that is there. And that's why, many of folks who are, whether it's FBA or other, folks who want to make sure that folks are very clear about our contribution and not allowing it to be whitewashed, and making sure that folks understand everything that has been poured into this nation. And when others don't do that, who maybe are recent, then it's not an uncomfortable situation. It is an untruthful situation, and we've just got to make sure that we continue to put the spotlight on everything that we have done.
Bernice King was one of those folks, Win Cooney. Give me 1 second. I want to don't go to it yet. I want to actually increase the size of this. She weighed in on this, and this was one of the items that surfaced that people were commenting on, which I think led Shabuzi to release that statement. So Bernice King, of course, the daughter of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., released this a day ago. It's Black History Month, and I have to ask, are people including enslaved Africans, descendants of those enslaved, and Black people whose unjust low-wage labor sustained the economy in the 1800s and 1900s as immigrants when they say immigrants built this country? Because chattel slavery was for the express purpose of building empire. But our ancestors weren't folks who came here seeking a better life. They arrived in chains, were bred like cattle, and severely violated sexually and otherwise. Their trauma shouldn't be diminished or forgotten, even in efforts toward freedom from ISIS inhumane, violent tactics. We can only get to justice for all when truth is taught, embraced, and spoken.
It's funny how those talking points sound all too familiar. But yet and still, y'all was the same one saying we was being divisive. Now, what happened was they heard Tucker Carlson and James Fishback mention FBA. They saw ABC run a segment on it, right? And they said, wait a minute, that voting block, 18 to 30 is going to be a problem. These young people, we're going to have to get out in front of this and start talking that FBA talk. We're going to have to commandeer those talking points from FBA. We're going to have to go out of our way, right? We know that we call them hypocrites. We know that we call them liars and fakes and phony, but they are telling the truth. They're telling the truth. We are allowing our history to be diminished here in America. And at one point, we was rocking on the Democratic plantation and we was going with the talking points, but it's not working because we're not getting the younger people on board. And that young voting bloc, those eligible voters are not agreeing with us. So we're going to have to come down and use those FBA talking points to get those young people on board. That's what we're going to have to do. And we're going to have to do everything we can do to ruin the reputation of Tariq, because they and the ADOS and all those other groups, we got to get them out of here so we can commandeer the talking points and get everything back to the way it was. That's what we're going to have to do. So don't fall for this. They are not on our side, right? These are Democratic shills trying to run interference, but they wasn't finished.
Me that's down deep in the South and had the book and the movie that Jamie Foxx starred in, talks about this in his book, and he talks about this quite a bit about how effectively slavery just continued. It changed its face a bit. He talks about this and really breaks this down. And so I think, to your point, not only do we need to understand, if I go to Bermuda, if I go to Haiti, Jamaica, I need to understand, what happened there, and then people coming from other parts of the world, immigrants, et cetera, Black immigrants, need to understand what happened here as it pertains to African Americans. But African Americans have to reconnect to what happened to us, to our descendants all that time ago, and how they prayed and struggled their way into a better future for us, even as they said, maybe not for me, but for them. So, and I also think that if we do a better job of that as African Americans today, you walking around and you got an American Express Gold Card, and your situation is great. You could be as progressive as they come and be against ICE and everything, but you got a different reality. And how intentional are we about making sure we're educating, connecting people, connecting our people, our relatives, our friends, to what happened before, so that we can continue to chart a path forward and act with the proper urgency. So we have to really do this on purpose. And maybe this is an opportunity for us to be reminded, brother made a mistake, but he's a performer. So when you perform, there's a lot sitting on you. You got to get your steps right. You got to get your music right. If you talk about immigrants, you got to get that right too, particularly as a brother, for sure. But let's make sure we're getting our own history right too, so that we can embrace our history and continue to move forward the way we need to.
Yeah, trust me.
Now, y'all hear this. Now, they was mad at us for wanting to highlight foundational Black American history. And we was going in talking about our inventions, our innovations, our massacres, things that we triumphed through, the Black codes, Jim Crow, how we sue insurance companies. We went through all that kind of stuff. Now all of a sudden they want to talk about Black American history. Now all of a sudden you want to separate, right? But they wasn't done.
Yeah, trust me. I've had to correct and personally call a number of African American entertainers who did not have their history right. I'll tell you this here. I will. First of all, the book you referred on my iPad, you were talking about Douglas Blackman's book, Slavery by Another Name, The Re-Enslavement of Black Americans from the Civil War to World War II. That's the book I think you were talking about there, Joe. I'll tell you this here. I remember being at the NAACP convention in Houston, and it was the Youth Council Division, and Russell Simmons was addressing them. And he stood up and he said that when he produced, I forgot which one of the movies, it was one of the rap movies. He said that he was the first African American to produce a major Hollywood film, and in the audience was the esteemed Vernon Jarrett. Vernon Jarrett, of course, worked in the Chicago Defender, columnist, first Black columnist for Chicago Sun-Times, and Vernon Jarrett was actually there. Now, Vernon Jarrett wasn't no youth. Vernon was in his 70s, and Vernon stood up and literally gave Russell Simmons a history lesson on Blacks in film, going back to Oscar Micheaux and bringing it all the way up, saying, no, you were not the first African American to produce a Hollywood film. And it was quite insightful. And when it was over, Vernon was talking to him, and I went over and I was talking to Russell and Vernon, and I literally said to Russell, "This is a brother. You need to get his information because trust me, this is living history." And by the way, Vernon Jarrett is also the creator, the founder of NAACP Act So competition. And so Vernon was one who did not care about your name or your title or your money. If you got Black history wrong, you were going to be corrected on the spot. So again, so for folk who are sitting here mad at Shabuzi, let me be real clear. I know a whole bunch of Black folk from Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, who don't know a damn thing about our own history. So some of y'all might want to pump the brakes because we gave your ass a Black History test. You may not pass.
So I'm saying all that to say, like, we already can see the play and what's going on, and I'm telling y'all, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. The play is in full effect, and they're trying to commandeer the talking points. Once they saw James Fishback and Tucker Carlson and ABC News come, they and Bernice King speak on it. Oh, they coming for it now. So now what we got to do is keep plowing the road forward, man, and keep teaching our history. Us teaching our history is not hate for nobody else, right? So I had a guy that come and left a comment in my comment section, kept on saying, well, how can we work together? Why are you so separate? Why are you being divisive? And I said to him, show me anywhere where I showed any hate for immigrants or being divisive. You attributing me being divisive to me teaching FBA history and culture. But I don't see you making no videos telling, how about you tell all Africans, all African nations to get rid of all their country names, all of their borders and everything, and just be black? How about you tell all the Caribbeans that don't be Jamaican, don't be Haitian, don't be Trinidadian, don't be from Barbuda, St. Thomas, just be black. Get rid of all your culture. The same thing you telling us, right? You telling us to not be divisive and be all inclusive, right? And allow all of our culture to be included with everybody. Well, do the same thing for Africans then. Tell Africa to get rid of, just wipe out all the tribalism, all the culture, all the things. Don't be Igbo, don't be Wolof, don't be Mandingo, don't be none of that. Just be black. Oh, I thought so. So until you can tell them to do that, don't come over here telling us we being divisive the minute we want to self-identify just as everybody else are. That don't mean that we're being hateful. Stop lying. Like, you guys are already being disingenuous, and you're coming as liars because you know that we're not saying that we hate you. We just want to highlight our culture, gatekeep our culture the same way you do. So until you say, well, I'm not Jamaican, I'm just black. I'm not Haitian, I'm just black. I've renounced all that stuff, and we just going to come together as global black people. Until you're willing to do that, don't expect us to do what you won't do yourself. Stop being hypocrites. And when they get to Roland and them, we already know what they're going to do. So I'm showing y'all the play before it even unfolds. But y'all got to let me know what y'all think. If you made it this far in the video, hit that like button, subscribe to Street Media TV. Leave your comments in the comment section. Remember, I love y'all. Till the next time. Peace.